Welcome to the Ministry 911 podcast.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lehman with Ministry 911, inviting you to join me on Friday, December 17th at Landis Hall for an evening of Christmas with Sharon Klosser-Gingrich, Thomas Cazzoli, Carol Heisey, and my husband, Jeffrey Lehman.
We'll be celebrating Christ's birth with clever harmonies, rich Christmas ballads, audience caroling with a live grand piano, and special guests Adam Lehman, Josiah Lapp, Danny Knoll, Aquila Reel, and Braden Trusty.
Reserve your tickets today at junctioncenterproductions.com. Merry Christmas!
In our last episode, 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 5 to 11, we saw Paul transition away from the method of offering truth in response to lying rumors to more of a streamlined focus of offering truth without any more regard for the rumors. It was as if Paul was saying, you've heard the rumors, we've acknowledged them, we've responded to them, now lay them aside, put the rumors to rest, and focus only on what is true. After doing so, Paul continued by peeling back the layers of his heart a little more, expressing more intimately how affectionately he, Silvanus, and Timothy felt toward the Thessalonian church. Looking today at verses 8 through 11, we'll reflect on some additional truths we didn't explore together last time, related to a specific literary progression that Paul used to show increased emphasis, and the efforts that Paul took in order to ensure that these new believers would not be distracted by the missionaries' material needs. We will also see Paul ask the Thessalonians to kind of connect the dots between not only God being their witness, but the Thessalonians themselves being witness of the missionaries' work. Let's read chapter 2, verses 7 through 11. But we were gentle among you, even as a nurse cherisheth her children. So being affectionately desirous of you, we were willing to have imparted unto you not the gospel of God only, but also our own souls, because ye were dear unto us. For ye remember, brethren, our labor and travail, for laboring night and day, because we would not be chargeable unto any of you. We preached unto you the gospel of God. Ye are witnesses, and God also, how holily and justly and unblameably we behaved ourselves among you that believe, as ye know how we exhorted and comforted and charged every one of you, as a father doth his children. We saw in verses 7 to 8 how these missionary men were gentle among them, like a nursing mother, cherishing her own children, whose tenderness and selflessness was such that she gave completely of herself without any ability to receive or demand something in return. Well, Paul was going out of his way to convey their esteem with expressions of unselfish, sacrificial love that could only come from men whose lives were truly being led and sanctified by the Holy Spirit. Paul continues in this same vein for the next several verses, but implements a bit of a different type of literary progression in doing so. Now, a few days. Well, a few days ago for us, our son led his 5th annual All Saints Day witnessing party where pizza and ice cream are followed by a neighborhood walk and door-to-door witness. As a parent, it's pretty exceptional to see these bold and courageous boys and girls and hear some of their follow-up questions that they ask. These kids are quite perceptive. The one unfortunate side for me, it's kind of silly, but it's the food which is left over. This time we ended with 3/4 of a sheet cake and over a gallon of ice cream, all of which seemed to beckon to me. In fact, the call was so great, I could even hear it from our upstairs bedroom in the middle of the night. I found myself experiencing in a less spiritual way this concept Paul was using in verse 8, not only, but also. I not only ate what I needed, but also ate, so much more. Well, verse 8 again reads, so being affectionately desirous of you, we were willing to have imparted unto you not the gospel of God only, but also our own souls, because ye were dear unto us. The words chosen here in the Greek, not only, but also, it signifies a progression of increased emphasis. It's very similar to how we read it in English. Some examples in which we might hear this kind of progression used today might include, I will not only offer you support and encouragement, but will also come alongside and labor with you because I love you. I not only listened to you, but also sat with you, grieved and cried with you in order to intentionally demonstrate my care. Or, as Paul wrote, we were willing to have imparted unto you not the gospel of God only, not only, but also our own souls, because ye were dear unto us. Commentator Lang put it this way: the apostle means to say, we were willing not only to fulfill our official service entrusted to us by God in delivering to you his gospel, but there was formed also a personal relation of the most devoted love, in consequence of which we were ready to sacrifice to you our own lives. Paul was not insinuating any way that he thought that sharing the gospel was of lesser value or importance than Paul's desire to share of himself personally, not the gospel of God only, but also our own souls. Rather, more of a distinction in his attitude of personal connection with the Thessalonian church, that the Thessalonians were so dear to the missionaries personally that the sharing with them went beyond a sense of duty or responsibility, beyond a heart of obedience, even beyond love for Christ and a general love for all the lost. Beyond these motivations, and in addition to them, there was a motivation from deep love and personal care specifically for the Thessalonians themselves, to the point that they were giving them all that they had. Verse 9, for ye remember, brethren, our labor and travail for laboring night and day, because we would not be chargeable unto any of you. We preached unto you the gospel of God. In this verse, Paul was reminding the Thessalonians of Timothy, Silas, and his own labor and travail, how they preached unto them the gospel of God while personally themselves laboring or working night and day in order to provide for their own personal needs and not let their own needs be a burden or distraction to any of the new Thessalonian believers, as though to say, remember our example to you in demonstrating how important it was that you focus on Christ and fellowship with him and be walking in the Holy Spirit. There was and there is nothing more important than Christ. No other God greater than he, no other spirit more powerful than he is. And we wanted you to focus on Christ only. And in the meantime, we, missionaries, gave of our very selves to serve and teach you, and worked hard physically so as to not be a burden to you. Remember this and continue to place your focus on Christ. What did this hard work, this laboring night and day, look like? Well, Paul was a tent maker. It was his trade, something he could often use during his travels to help provide for his own financial and physical needs. You might ask, well, why would the Thessalonians need tents? Thessalonians' location at the time made it a booming metropolis in its day. It was centrally located within the Roman Empire, which consisted really of most of the entire known world at the time. Not only was it situated along one of the heaviest ports, called the Thermaic Gulf, but it also had running through it a modern-day highway connecting the west, Rome, to the east, Asia. That highway was called the Via Egnatia. Well, these two venues, the Thermaic Gulf and the Via Egnatia, were used extensively by travelers, tradesmen, as well as the two Roman armies, the Roman Legion and the Auxilia, each groups of people who regularly used and needed tents. Thus, while it was hard work and very laborious, requiring much time and many day and night hours, Timothy, Paul, and Silas determined to provide for their own needs in this way in order not to be a burden to the new church and to prevent the new church from being distracted from focusing on the gospel and their new relationship with Christ. For ye remember, brethren, our labor and travail for laboring night and day, because we would not be chargeable unto any of you. We preached unto you the gospel of God. Verse 10 reads, Ye are witnesses, and God also, how holily and justly and unblameably we behaved ourselves among you that believe." Paul brings up the idea of witnesses again. In verse 5, he indicated that God was their witness. Here he indicates that the Thessalonians are their witnesses too. In doing so, he's affording the Thessalonians another opportunity to remain firm in what they knew to be true of Paul, Silas, and Timothy from the beginning. Not only did they remember or recall, as he said in verse 9 several times beforehand, but they were actual first-hand witnesses of how the missionaries acted. Nonetheless, the acknowledgement of God's witness remained vital, for while the Thessalonians could attest to what they saw, the missionaries' behavior, only God could testify to what could not be seen, the missionaries' heart, their intent, the inner integrity of these men. One of the ways God works in our relationships with one another as believers is by giving us discernment through his Holy Spirit, according to what he witnesses that we can't see of one another. Years ago, I had a friend, he's with the Lord now, but it was a friend whom the Lord always seemed to grant discernment of my character. There was a time when I frequently felt the need to hide behind a cloak of righteousness. Witnesses of my good behavior saw no need to be concerned, but the Holy Spirit, God, who witnessed the inner workings of my heart, knew there was some reason for concern. It seemed as though this friend and the Holy Spirit were somehow in cahoots with one another, as though the Holy Spirit was giving him inside information about my own integrity. And while not always pleasant, it was a good thing that the Lord used to make me feel very uneasy when tempted to be double-minded. Even my best hiding could not escape the truth that God would reveal from what only he could witness inside my heart. Well, Paul was grateful for these methods of witness as well. He explained how the Thessalonians were witnesses, again, to what they saw outwardly, but he also continued to remind them of God's witness to what God saw and knew inwardly. In talking about the integrity of your own life, would you so encourage those around you to rely on not only what they can see, but also on what God can see, what God witnesses inside of you? Does what you portray to those around you line up with your true intentions, thereby being comforted with the fact that God is your witness and comfortable with the idea of him revealing your inner character to others? Or are you kind of hiding behind a cloak of ill intent, double-mindedness, greed, selfishness, pride, hidden motives, afraid of what others might see if the Lord would give them an idea of what your heart's true intentions are? Well, Paul, Silas, and Timothy, they behaved holily and justly and unblameably around the Thessalonians. But it wasn't a mere outward showing of their flesh, which can sometimes look similar on the outside, but rather a result and consistent with the Holy Spirit's work in their lives on the inside. To walk in the Spirit and as vessels from which Christ's holy, just, and unblameable character shone. Paul wasn't talking perfection. They continued to be sinful men, but their intention and desire was to be walking by the Holy Spirit and to be guided by him. For you and me, it's the same. It's not about our walking in perfection and God taking every single choice we make and somehow sharing it miraculously around the body like some tattletaling deity. Yet his witness of us is a good and serious thing. It's something to be appreciated and respected. And that can bring great peace or great unrest. Should we be living a double life of secrecy or ill intent, or be considering doing so, he will find a way of revealing our heart to someone. And while this might not be comfortable, it is consistent with a loving Father whose heart, out of his love, is to discipline, train, and sanctify us, and make us more like his Son, Jesus Christ. In our next episode, 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 11 to 13, we'll learn of some cultivating work the Holy Spirit intended for the Thessalonians. how we can respond to some of the luring but destructive pressures of the flesh, and why the Lord's primary action for us is not mere behavior change. I'm Jeff Lehman, Executive Director of Ministry 911. Get in touch by emailing me at info@ministry911.com. Find us online at ministry911.com. And remember to check out the junctioncenterproductions.com for our Friday, December 17 Christmas concert and Evening of Christmas. junctioncenterproductions.com. We hope to see you there.